Alright guys, had a question not too long ago about the cast iron bow tie intake manifold for a sleeper setup, and I got thinking about it, and the person that made the question said he's got a set of Sportsmans that flow 290, 300, and he was wondering if that intake manifold could cover it. Well, as it happens to be, the one that I do have has the different angle on the center bolt hole, so it's for 87 and up. And of course, my little brain starts working, and I check out Facebook Marketplace, and I see this little beauty. What this is an Edelbrock Performer RPM Q-Jet. Never seen one before. Never worked on one before. Picked one up from a nice young local guy. And I said, you know what? I need to do something different anyway. I'm going to see if I can do a really nasty sleeper intake out of this. So, here we are. Okay, this is what we got first time out. The head... I have two heads. One of them I know I cut for 1.25 intake valves. The other one wasn't as big. It was probably a 208. I have a feeling this is a 208 cylinder head with a 2.125 intake valve. It does seal, but I know they were around 300 CFM. Now that might just be picking up the other head and taking a look at it, but this is where I started, and that's where it's going to be right now. This is still the same head that is on the bench. So this is what we were, just plain it cylinder head with some clay. This is a bone stock with my carb on it. Remember I said something about Performer RPMs only flowing about 220? Okay, they only flow about 222. That is with a head that's flowing 177 at that point. Okay, so it takes 50 plus CFM hit. We're going to see if we can do better than that. But before I show you where we wind up, the first time I flowed it, after it was ported, right, it was brought up. It's not quite a 1206. It's probably more like a 1205. I don't have any 1205 gaskets left, so I put a 1206. I marked it as a 1206 and kept it a little bit shy on top and bottom. And when I reflowed it, it was nearly identical. In fact, it was all minuses except for two spots. 500 and 700 was up a little bit. And right away I said to myself, I goofed something up. Something somewhere is not right. Yeah, I forgot part of the port. And there was a serious interruption in the way the port's designed that I made worse. I'll show you. Okay, this bung right here on the inside is a real mess, because the port comes this way and then has a big divot where it comes out and then goes back. So it's got a huge interruption in flow right there. Not only that, there's also an interruption this way. So I did some work on that, and we got a few CFMs better, but not a huge difference. Then I was talking to Rob on the phone, and I said, hey, you know what? I'm testing this thing with a 770 square bore. I know you got, he's got those big thermal quads. I think he's got an 800 CFM. And whoever's going to get this is going to probably put like an 800 CFM, maybe an old Cadillac or an old big block quadrajet worked up on it. And I think he's going to bring that by this weekend. We're going to take a look and see if this makes a big difference, because, you know, you can see it's big difference as far as the way the plenum is made. This plenum is actually very close to that giant bow tie. It's really deep. It's very generous. I took quite a bit of metal out of this. quite a bit because I want a big plenum, right? But the flow canes aren't where I think they should be. So let's put on a gasket. Take a look at how choked down that gets when you put on that gasket. Now I could check, make sure these radiuses and everything are good. I will be doing that. I wish I had a 4-hole gasket. I don't know if I have any. But what's really interesting is watch the flow difference putting that gasket on makes. That blew me away. Now I remember the big bow tie when I put it on the Sportsmans that were flowing about 300, and after I did my magic to them, they came out around 260. Okay, and that was for a high RPM 331 that my buddy was going to build. Let's take a look at this. I'm actually going to change this gasket. I'm going to flow this. Okay, we're set for about max lift. We're going to turn the machine on and see where we are with this gasket, and then I'm going to pull the gasket off and we're going to check. That's all I'm going to touch. Hopefully that pause button didn't get me. You know how that is. Okay, so we got 228, I think it was, with that gasket. Let's see what we got without the gasket. I think I was not expecting that, not even a little bit. Okay, you would think because it's got the plenum that you could use either type of carburetor on it. I would never expect that big a drop. Okay, if you take a look directly over it, they might be, that one looks good, right? The rear one looks like that'll clear the butterflies easily. These maybe they need a little more work. Now I do have to be careful because this curve here is actually this runner. Okay, so that's had a decent amount of metal pulled out of here. It's not thin, it's nothing to really worry about, but if I do have to change this and take away here, I do have to make sure I don't burn a hole through that. That would suck. We're not going to do that. Okay, so these are the flows. The first time I did it, and I was just scratching my head, right? All minuses, plus, that's it. Then I took the carb off, right? 244. That was with no radius. And then I put a spacer under the carb, and I picked up a lot. Well, not even a lot. 223 to 231, but a noticeable difference. So I'm thinking of notching this divider, but I have a special design that I notched the divider. I don't know of anyone else that does it quite the way I do it, but I think I may do that with this. It's quite a bit of grinding, but it's not taking the entire divider out. If you watch the Mission Impossible stuff, I did that on the throttle body injection manifold and the original 2-barrel manifold, where I did my curved notch. And that might be a big help for somebody that's going to be drag racing this. What I'd like to do with this is basically, this is going to be pretty much maxed out, except I haven't drilled any holes into it or cut it in half or anything like that. I mean, I know a guy, he'll take 2 Edelbrock Performers and he'll cut them in both of them in half. Not quite in half. and weld them together and make serious power with it. I'm not going to give you his secret, but it's, when he was telling me about it, it was a $3,500 job then. I'm sure it's $4,000 now to get one of those manifolds made. But it's one of those spec racing things. That's the only manifold you can use, and guys are looking for an edge, so they'll pay $4 grand to get a manifold done. So this one, I want to go out on it. The runners are quite a bit bigger than they were stock. I took a ton of aluminum out of this thing, a ton, as in almost 2 full days worth of porting, and not a huge difference. I mean, let's take a look at the other plan. So I didn't realize it was the carb gasket itself. So I did some more work to the plenum and the divider where it entrances runner number 8, and by that bung. And we got a couple, let's put some pluses and minuses in. Okay, they're all pluses as far as flow. When I worked on that entrance coming from the plenum into the runner, and where that boss is, that really made a bad disruption. And I also picked the upper plenum number 8 runner because it's usually the worst flowing runner. Okay? So, depending upon... Now, okay, let me take a step back. I haven't put this on the bench upside down and blown air through it and all of that, because stock, I know it's a train wreck. What I usually do is I do my first really rough out porting and get an idea of where everything is, and then I will do that. But I haven't done that with this intake yet. I think I'm going to do some more work on it on the bench with the cylinder head as it is. I'm really thinking that it's going to need that plenum notch, and that'll give it a nice pickup, because the spacer, right? The spacer gave it a nice pickup. Well, what the notch is doing is the same thing as the spacer, but nobody can see it, right? And I think I'm gonna disguise this manifold. I haven't really decided how I'm gonna do that, and I don't really have a game plan for it. Even if I just burr it all up and make it look crappy, take the Edelbrock off of it, take the RPM off of it, it'll probably fool some guys. Give me some input on that. Give me some input on what you think. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the pickup was not nearly what it should have been for these. Really. It barely went up at all with taking a ton of metal out. Now, yeah, it has a rougher texture on it than it had. And I did use my finer texture. Let's take a quick look at that. Let's get some light on that. Okay. I don't even know which one's better, with the light or without the light. But you can tell it's a finer texture. This is very similar to the texture DV wanted me to put on that 743 horsepower 421 small block. So I figured it's going to be high RPM for a dual plane. It would need the lighter texture. Let me know if I goof that up, guys. Okay, you can see it's a little bit smaller than the 1206. Yeah, it's a little banged up because I don't do my final until I'm all done. And yeah, I always wind up hitting stuff with the grinder because the burrs aren't quite long enough. I actually had to use, I have one 9-inch burr that I actually needed to use to get all the way down there. It's okay. It's not as perfect as I would like, but it's all right. Let's see if we can change the lighting any better. Is the light on? Yeah, light's on. Okay. All right, guys. So, as far as the runners themselves, I believe they're identical to the other Performer RPM that has the holly pattern on it. It just has a different plenum, but this plenum is way bigger, which I like. I like the big plenum. But I never imagined the Holley pattern bolted up to that would be such a difference. Alright guys, thanks for hanging out. Let me know what you think I should do with this, and have a good night.